Hi everyone. I wanted to read a comment that I left on a video. It was a video announcing I guess an upcoming series by an English professor here in Canada by the name of Janice Fiamengo, and it's going to be called the Fiamengo Files. I believe I can link below the video in which I left this comment, but I wanted to read this comment to you because it has to do with I think the level of discourse here on the internet, and it's something that concerns me quite a bit, and I might do a little bit of a commentary after, but first I'd like to go ahead and read you the comment. I'm reminded of the saying, everything you know is wrong, which alludes to culture as much as it does politics. It's often said that most government policies end up achieving the opposite of their stated objectives, for example. What's clear to me now as I look across our cultural landscape is that, despite the vociferous pronouncements of a quote-unquote war on women, there is demonstrably a war on men. Simply being a man already marks your defect. Being cisgendered and white are nails in your coffin, regardless of your individual virtue. I mean, look at it. This gender is seen as so dangerous that it cannot be allowed to have meetings to discuss issues pertinent to the experience of men. Perhaps this is all a result of feminist theory, which has been suggested to be rooted in conflict theory. The speech is one of equality, but the undertones are messages of dichotomy. It's us or them. This is echoed by the sentiments against any woman who dares challenge modern feminist dogma. They are seen and called out as quote-unquote gender traitors or gender Benedict Arnolds. Last time I checked, there need not be a gender war. In fact, there isn't, except in the minds of extremist ideologues. There certainly isn't in my home or my town. Perhaps I'm fortunate enough to have avoided the quote-unquote institutions of higher learning, which seems to be the front line of this manufactured conflict. There need not be such a conflict. Where I come from, reason, logic, and evidence are supposed to rule the day. Don't agree with what someone is saying? Question their evidence or its source? Challenge it. Bring your counter evidence and arguments to the table and let's talk. What I've seen far too often, especially on social media, is that as soon as someone from the feminist or social justice camp, and I do not mean those in the pejorative, gets the sense that someone on the other end of the comment feed is challenging their ideology, they shut down. And almost inevitably end up resorting to dismissive personal attacks and a complete withdrawal from the conversation. This happens with few exceptions, and I give credit to those who do not engage in this behavior, but it has the effect of not only dismissing in the moment, but giving those people the out of publicly dismissing their opponents as regressive, bigoted, and not worth anyone's time from that point on. Effectively, they have sidestepped the need to deal with the issue or facts at hand. Last time I checked, we're all still limited to this one blue ball. Dismissing people doesn't mean they cease to exist or that they don't have a say in public policy. It's a self-delusion to think that this dismissal somehow solves anything. Discourse should be our means to solve complex social problems, and rational argumentation and empirical evidence should be the tool that we use to facilitate this end. Unfortunately, on the interwebs, reasonable discourse seems to be dying. Feelings aren't arguments. Arbitrary dismissals don't constitute debate wins, and name-calling is not a relevant way to counter an argument. I said it earlier this week, but I don't think our species is ready for the internet. We've just not evolved enough. Now, this seems all highly pessimistic on my part, but this comes from a lot of frustration on my part, and it's frustration mostly in observation, although I have been involved in some of this dialogue with people. And the dismissiveness and the rush to judgment and the lack of genuine curiosity and interest in how another person sees and views the world is really troubling to me. There's a difference, I think, between you're doing it wrong and you don't care and you're evil and you're part of the problem. There's a massive difference there. So, for instance, when we talk about social problems that are very complex and typically can be very emotion-based, like abortion or the rights of people to marry, people of gay and lesbian persuasion, that sort of thing, racism. These are all such highly charged issues that people will often demand an adherence to rationality and empiricism, and they'll often demand that their opponents give consideration to their framing of the argument, but they don't often give it. And so what ends up happening is the words bigot and regressive and all these terms come out. These are these dismissive terms that I talk about, but what they're rooted in is a complete lack of willingness to, I think, engage in seeing things from the other person's point of view in a real, genuine and deep way, to understand. Because the one thing I see when I look across this, maybe this is the Libra in me, you know, I got the scales going on here, I can kind of see things from other people's points of view. And the one thing that this helps me to understand when I'm viewing it this way is that they're not evil, that they do care. And the terms like bigot and regressive and evil, which I've seen, what these indicate to me when people use them is that they actually have, through their unwillingness to understand the other person's point of view, they've actually come to view them as evil. They actually believe that they don't care. And I've seen this quite a bit recently. I was talking with someone about Hobby Lobby and the decision there. I was talking with another person, I've been witnessing actually another person talking about the honey badgers and their discussions of rape culture and other feminist issues. And the conclusions seem to be that Hobby Lobby, for instance, doesn't care about the rights of another human being and want to, you know, discriminate against them in the workplace, or that the honey badgers don't care about rape and rape victims and that sort of thing. And these things aren't the case. If you took a moment to genuinely, and keep in mind, I'm not advocating for any of these positions. I'm talking about the discussion. If you took the time to understand things from each person's point of view, you would understand, I think, better. It doesn't solve the problem, but I think it's one step, it's one necessary step towards us actually dealing with these problems in a way, because ultimately I think there's probably a real rational and empirical answer for most of these issues. We need to drill down beyond some of the, well, often, you know, sophistic kind of arguments that people make and the way people have led themselves to believe certain things, and help them see. But I think it's a mistake to assume that people just don't care and that they're evil and that they're being harsh. In the Hobby Lobby, I think, is a good example for that, because the person that I was talking with was coming out saying, you know, they're discriminating against women and they're regressive and they're bigoted, etc., etc. But she was actually being a bigot herself in not having any willingness to understand the argument from their side of the fence. Now, they might be wrong, but they're not malevolent, right? There's a big difference, I think, between being wrong and being evil. Wrong you can work with. Evil is kind of tough, right? And there's no willingness on her part, I don't think, to look at it from their side of the fence and realize that what you're asking them to do is to contribute to murder, right? Now, one would have to, at the very least, have a little bit of respect for their conviction, right? That they're not willing to commit murder. Now, again, they may be wrong, right? I think there are a lot of arguments for why they're incorrect. But I think it's important to have at least an understanding that they're not malevolent and they're not evil. They're coming at it from a genuinely compassionate and I think principled viewpoint, right? To provide a counterpoint, I mean, the worry, of course, of making a video like this and talking about these things is that people are going to think I'm advocating for Hobby Lobby's position, and I'm not necessarily. I think Ruth Ginsburg had a good challenge to it. Some of the challenge that I would offer to that would be, I think there's something to do with the ownership of the funds, the custody of the funds, right? So in other words, if an employer pays you your paycheck, what you do with that money, it now is in your custody. The money is in your custody. You've already earned it. It actually is possessed by you. And you can do whatever you want with that money. The employer shouldn't really have any say over whether or not you purchase these few forms of birth control that they consider to be murderous or whatever. I think the same argument could be made that, you know, if this employer is contributing to some sort of a health plan, health benefits plan for you, that they lose custody of that money as soon as it's transferred, that you've earned it in the same way you've earned your paycheck, and they have no more right to decide what you do, nor do they have any more responsibility for what actually occurs with those funds than they would with a paycheck for you, right? And of course, you could make other arguments about, you know, when a person is a person and all that, what constitutes murder. Of course, another argument that would be counter, that would be in support of Hobby Lobby, might be something that, because of course the argument from feminists is that, hey, they're still paying for the blue pill, right? They're still paying for men's erectile dysfunction medicine, so this is a sexist issue. But I don't think it's a sexist issue, because one would only need to do the thought experiment. What if there were a birth control method that was not purely contraceptive, but it was actually sort of more of an abortion-based pill for men? That was some sort of a Trojan horse, perhaps, that, you know, that after copulation, there would actually be fertilization that takes place, and then at some point after fertilization, this Trojan horse contraception would actually abort the fertilized egg. I think the people at Hobby Lobby would object similarly, so I don't think it's a sexist issue. But the problem is we can't even have those discussions because people want to jump all the way to the level of you're evil and we're going to dismiss you as human beings. And as I said in my comment, we still all have to live here, and these are very divisive issues, and I think we need to have a way to tone down the rhetoric and have real conversations with people and have some respect for the fact that they're not evil. The same thing with the rape culture discussion with the honey badgers. The comments that I've seen left seem to indicate an idea that they actually don't care about rape, and they don't care about rape victims because they challenge common notions of rape culture. And one of the comments that I'd seen on there had to do with Bill Cosby. The comment was something to the effect that, you know, if we don't live in a rape culture, how is it that Bill Cosby was able to get away with what he was doing for decades? And again, we can't even have a rational discussion, because if you challenge that, as I'll probably do now, then you're going to be labeled as evil, that you don't care about rape victims, and that's not the case, right? This is a way of just dismissing the arguments and sidestepping them and not having to deal with them in a rational, empirical way. If I was to challenge that notion about Bill Cosby, what I would say is that is not indicative of a rape culture, that's indicative of a celebrity culture, right? We have an unhealthy celebrity culture. We put celebrities and politicians far too up on a pedestal. I think it's a mistake to name bridges and airports after politicians. I think it's a mistake to put our celebrities up on a pedestal the way we do, because I think it leads to these things. And of course, there's also sort of a gravy train culture that we have too, right? Too many people who depend financially on Mr. Cosby don't want to rock the boat, etc., etc. But when you look at a culture, what you're talking about is a general acceptance of a practice, and that's not the case. A thought experiment might be, let's put Bill Cosby in the general prison population and see if a rape culture exists. And this is arguably not the most moral among us, right? Or if, ask yourself the question if any one of us could get away with the same thing that Bill Cosby does, or did. And the outrage, of course, against Bill Cosby. I've watched many newscasts upon all of these, and the general consensus I've heard is, well, he's done. You know, and that sort of a euphemism for, you know, the life that he knew is over. He's going to be, you know, he potentially is going to face a lot of difficulty over this. Or the immediate firing of Jian Ghomeshi, or any one of a number of different things. The sex offender registry, and the fact that a lot of sex offenders actually have to go door to door to let everybody know that that they're going to be moving into the area. And despite the you know, the descriptions on many of the sex offender registry websites, where they've made a lot of these public now, that this is not intended to give people an avenue to harass the sex offenders. This is what happens, right? And I don't think that would happen in a rape culture. Anyway, I guess, you know, again, this is a complex issue. We could have deeper discussions about it, except we can't, because immediately people jump to this idea that you are evil. And you know, the same thing goes the other way. People will say, oh, you social justice warriors, you don't actually care about these issues. You're just in it for attention, or you're just in it to control people. But I think it's wrong to do that. I think these people have a genuine care and consideration for other people. And I think if you were able to engage in real, meaningful discussion with these people, if they are evil, if they are malevolent, if all they really do care about is their attention, that will be revealed. And sometimes the best way to reveal someone's true motives is to engage them in calm and rational discourse. And I just don't think that's happening enough. I'm not sure we're evolved enough to use the internet properly, because it's too easy to be anonymous and just dismiss people, and I'm not even talking about anonymous like troll behavior, because you can still be anonymous on the internet and still be a regular contributor to these issues, but you still have a little bit of a buffer there where you can say things and act in ways that you would never act if you were face to face with someone. And I think that has its benefits. That has the powerful impact of getting people to speak out when they might not otherwise. But far too often, it allows people to just launch into troll behavior. I often wonder about the impact, the long-term impact of that. This is such a new phenomenon. People did not treat one another this way, you know, for a long time now, right? Because they just couldn't get away with it. And now suddenly we can. And I just wonder what kind of an impact that's going to have on our culture over the long term. I think, you know, the best thing to do is to err on the side of compassion, err on the side of treating other people as the way that you would wish to be treated. And if someone is being completely unreasonable, just disengage. Don't support that behavior by continuing to engage someone who's not engaging in a thoughtful and rational way and is not giving you, I think it's a bad internal message, right? If someone's not giving you the respect and dignity you deserve, especially if you're approaching the conversation that way, then you're giving yourself a bad message if you continue to interact with that person. I wouldn't do it in my private life, right? If someone is treating me poorly, it's over between us. I don't see any reason to act any different on the internet. So I just wanted to share that. I think it's very, very important not to just dismiss people as evil or malevolent without giving a real considered review of their viewpoint from their side. It doesn't mean you have to accept it. That's supposed to be the strongest ability that we have, is the ability to engage ourselves in the ideas of others without accepting them, to take a walk through and check it out. You don't have to buy it, right? To understand it thoroughly. And then if they're wrong, if their ideas are irrational or they're not based in empiricism, you are the best equipped at that point to help show them why. You're the best equipped to challenge that and put it to rest. Because if all we do is entrench, you know, in these polarized discussions, and we get entrenched on one side or the other and just launch the barbs at one another of bigotry and regressives and all of this sort of thing, we never make any headway anyway. We just don't, right? Because we'll just entrench. And someone who's entrenched isn't being introspective, right? They're being defensive. We need to be introspective, and we need to be willing to engage. Too many words. I'll cut it off now. Thanks very much for watching. Let me know what you think as always.